Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas, and I'm going to be your host today, and we're going to be talking about the secrets to seamless game localization. You know, global success in games requires more than just translating text. It demands building localization into the DNA of development. But too often, devs wait until the last minute, only to find that the process is more involved than they anticipated. So, in this episode, we're going to explore effective strategies for planning a localization early, how to avoid common traps that can limit reach, and secrets to keeping things budget friendly so your localization efforts work for you and not against you. So, that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody, and we're back. And today with us, I have Alexander Murauski. Alexander, how's it going? And thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you for having me today. I'm doing great. And you?
I am doing well. The weather's great. Can't complain. And it's just been going well in general. But, speaking of going well, I'm just, honestly super excited to have this conversation with you today because, folks, this is the first time we're really getting into doing a little bit of a deep dive, I guess. Yes or no, but I mean, we're having a great conversation about localization. But before we get into that more, for those of you who aren't familiar with Alexander, he is the CEO of Alkanos. And I mean, you've you've been the CEO, but managed this company for over 21 years. That's impressive.
Yeah, fortunately, it's been successful for some time.
Well, yeah. Great to hear. And I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into a lot more of this in our conversation, but I figured if you wouldn't mind, like, give us a chance to, learn a little bit more about Alkanos. Yes, it's a localization company, but like, what are some of the things that you've managed? Like, how many languages do you guys do? And what are the things, like, what is it you do at Alkanos?
Yeah, so in the industry, it's called localization services provider. There are tens of thousands of companies that do translations, and there is only 100 companies that we consider our competitors. So they are localization services provider. What we do is we translate web, apps, games, everything that is for international audience. So we translate into 120 languages, and all the translators, they are native speakers of their languages, and they are living in their respective countries. And it's a crowd of 1,500 people we work together just in 1 year. So that's a network. So this is what we do. We build localization pipelines, workflows. We help companies build their localization. We help them with their everything that is connected to the languages. Once you're international, we can help you with the languages. This is what we do at Alkanos.
Wow, that's great. And I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into like other, potential logistics, I mean, as it relates to the topic and everything, but I'm sure you're going to find, folks, that there's a lot more that's involved in terms of what we consider as translation or understanding and context and so many other different things. And again, this is why I'm excited to have this conversation. And outside of, leading that, your company for that amount of time, I mean, you guys received some awards, you have engaged in some speaking events. I'm just curious to learn a little bit more about those things too.
So regarding the events, we're participating in different conferences, in different podcasts to spread the word, to help people. Yeah, I like talking about the company, the business development, the history, everything. But the most valuable thing I could tell is how to build localizations in the companies, especially game development companies. Lots of advice, lots of experience I can share. So this is what I usually talk
about. So lots of different events talking about these various topics as it relates to the business, and I'm sure in some capacity a little bit beyond too. That's all just as helpful, but kind of centralized around the localization aspect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, definitely appreciate you sharing more about yourself, about Elkanos. And now we want to get to know you a little bit more before we get into the heart of our conversation. And to do that, folks, we're going to put Alexander through the Q box round, which is a few random questions I prepared here for him. So without further ado, Alex, are you ready for the Q box round?
Yes, of course.
All right, excellent. First,
Welcome.
first is, what's the most common mistake you see companies make in the industry with their business?
Well, speaking about companies that going global,
Hmm.
we usually deal with companies that going global, and we also did this mistake. We're also going global. We're an international company, so one of the mistakes I would mention is going global without being local.
Hmm.
So we're an international company, we're a global company, and we once tried to build a business presence in Japan. So Japan is my personal interest. That's a very common thing. And I tried to build some kind of branch there to get some clients, to get some business. And I failed. We bought some advertising. We translated our website. We did everything. We got some leads, but no orders, nothing. I could make it successful only by hiring people there, because I got some very good Japanese partners who helped me localize the business there. So and this had become a strategy for us. So we made this same thing in Poland, in Korea, and we're in China. And so going global, you must do it locally in every country. So my mistake was that I was trying to do this without people in the countries I wanted to go.
Hmm.
So that's a mistake, I would say.
Excellent. I mean, especially from that learning perspective and everything, and we have our own ideas and approaches to these things, but then sometimes it takes those learnings to realize, oh, that wasn't really the right way to go about doing it. So I appreciate you sharing that story. Next is, what's the most helpful or impactful advice you ever received?
I'm not sure. I received this advice from some coaches or from somewhere. Maybe it came from some books, but and also it's connected with the first question. So this advice is to hire people that are better than you in something.
Mm.
So if I wanted to sell more, I hired a salesperson who is far more developed in the sense of sales than me. And going global, okay, I cannot speak Japanese, just a little bit, and hiring people that are doing impossible for me just leads to the development of the business. So we are doing impossible things. We are only value impossible things. So doing impossible things only happens when you hire someone that is far ahead of what you can do yourself. So hiring people that are better than you in the areas is my best piece of advice I could just transfer to the next person.
Yeah. No, well said too, because it's like, folks, we can only do so much ourselves, right? So, and you're not going to be the best at everything you do. It'd be cool if you could be, but realistically, it's not the case. So, love that piece of advice. And last but not least, and the staple here on the show is, what game are you playing now?
So now I'm replaying all the Doom franchise. So from and the last game is Doom Eternal. That's my favorite. I play. I'm not a professional player. I don't play with people. I'm just playing with my PlayStation. It's just my my way of meditation. I also play accordion, so that's another thing that helps me just feel a little bit to have some rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes even though it's a Doom game, folks, like I mean, it makes sense. Like it's something else to kind of like help you unplug and stuff. And it's funny. I think we had a past guest that was talking about sleep of all things, like how the value of sleep and one of the
Mhm,
things they
mhm.
called out to too was like if you're having difficulty sleeping or trying to unwind at the end of the day, actually playing any type of game could be supportive to help that process of you unwinding, which it is sometimes seems counterintuitive, especially with like a Doom game, but it's true. It works, and there's science to back it. So
Yeah,
love.
sometimes after playing a session of Doom, like for half an hour and an hour, I feel like just returning from a gym. So
Oh yeah, and then there's that. Yes,
this
I used to actually do that with Fortnite sometimes. I would like take a lunch break and play some Fortnite, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I got all this energy just from that. So
I'm sometimes looking how my kids playing. They are all in Minecraft, building everything, and just and also Fortnite. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And now we're going to get to our conversation for today, folks, which I shared with you in the intro, which is the secrets to seamless game localization. And to kick things off, Alexander, I'm, curious. When most people think about, localization, I'm sure they imagine, just the translation and something that's probably happened close to the end. But from your perspective, why is this mindset such a problem?
Yeah, actually, that's a big problem. Because when you release a game, you are mostly into marketing. You think about your wish lists, about how you get how it will be sold. Uh, you have no time for localization that time. So its release time is very hot, very hot time. Uh, if your localization is was not planned, was not planned, you'll get higher costs. It's chaos. It's a chaos. Even technically, your game might not be prepared, might not be internationalized, and so localization is too much work uh, just to postpone it to the end. So the proper localization starts when you just first write your first lines of code for the game.
Hmm.
So yeah, my best advice to start localization is if you ever think about that your game will be localized, just start with two languages, just from the very beginning, and this will help you build the game that is localizable. It will be internationalized properly. Just two languages at the very beginning, one native language, one, I don't know, even imaginal language will get you to the point where your localization is at least well planned. So postponing to the end of the release cycle, nobody does this. Maybe inexperienced people, maybe inexperienced developers, but it must be done from the very beginning, technically. Technically.
Yeah, no, great points. And I mean, you alluded to some other things, which we were probably going to go into in a little bit too, but it's like, localization also, and the reason why it can be so chaotic towards the end is because you also have to account for, UX, UI, all that type of stuff. You have to think about like, okay, great, you have different languages, whether it's even just, two, a native and another, but then how is that going to impact, your marketing efforts? Is it going to impact your marketing efforts? There's all these other questions to account for, and just the fact of simple translations is only part of it, because again, we probably go into this a little bit, but there's cultural aspects we have to account for. There's so many different nuances and things that we won't even begin to think, and it's not just text translation.
Yeah, and successful games starts from marketing, I think. So you cannot just create a game and and then ask yourself, how would I sell it? Well, that would be a mistake. Experienced developers, they think forward, and if they plan to sell, they start to think about their marketing. How would they promote the game? What will be the regions the game will be released? How, and especially this is very important for mobile games when you plan to buy ads. So buying ads in the United States might be expensive, but in Argentina or in Brazil, if your game converts, then it's you obviously would want to localize it. And this game development sometimes starts with the understanding what markets the game will be intended to, and this implies localization from the very beginning. So it's not only the game localization, but also the marketing localization. I would. This is my take on it.
Yeah, no, really good take there too, because like you were saying, even if you're going to lead with just like if you're going to lead with the idea of localization, have at least another one, at least one other language. And from that, it could be as simple as, well, I would, me personally, because of the work I do, would recommend validating and looking into it further. But let's say you're making a very heavy like strategy game, or maybe it could be, you know, that there's a lot of information out there that says, oh, Germany could be a great place for this to market to because they're really into strategy games, or some other country is really a big time player into this type of game. And as long as you start with that and then dig in further, that at least is going to validate that decision. And then you're going to go in there with that much stronger, as Alexander just said. And you know what? You brought up another interesting point that I think is good is, you know, talking about like, you know, obviously towards release is a bad time to consider. But I'm curious then, you know, what are some of the, let's say, practical ways that teams can build localization, you know, into their actual development cycle? Because I know some of their concerns are, well, we don't want to slow things down. So what are some practical ways they can build that into it without worrying about like pushing back their deadlines and milestones and such?
Yeah, like I said, if you start with two languages, so you have 80% of your internationalization. Because once you have something like currency or like currency to display, this will depend on the language, and in your code you will use some library to localize it. So every software development framework and language like Swift or Kotlin, they have the libraries that just help you localize everything. When you also this is also about using Unicode for string resources, and also this is thinking about localization will imply that you do not hard code any string resources into the code. You will be keeping them in separate resource files, and those resource files are actually is what being localized down. Also, you will be considering using different fonts. For example, for Latin languages, so there are lots of fonts, but if you use that font for Chinese or Japanese characters, there might be no glyphs present. They just no glyphs in the font. So for different languages, you would be, especially when in the game development, you would be selecting different fonts. And if you're ever considering releasing your game in some Arabic countries, which have, or Israel, so which have right to left layout, so this is also implies that you think about the layouts, and to build the proper workflow that does not slow down your releases. So imagine that you organize your code, you have string resources that are separated from the code, you have internationalized your game, all the fonts and encodings, everything, but you have files and you have 20 languages to localize into. You have localization files multiplied by 20 times more localization files. And this must be organized in some way. And back in time, there were no such things to organize, but now we have lots of localization platforms. The key point of organizing proper localization workflow is using some of the localization platforms available on the market. There are maybe dozen of them. I can name Crowdin as a good example. So the platform allows you to basically integrate with your GitHub repository. For example, if you keep your resource files in some Git repository, so it can easily integrate and just can take your files from there and extract all the localizable streams, and it provides the environment for a manager and translators to do the actual translations, and then it just creates a pull request to your repository back with localized versions of the files. So, and you just accept the pull request and you have everything localized. And you don't even, you can automate this. So once you add some new lines of text that must be localized, overnight you get the pull request from 20 translators that did their work. And you just accept the pull request, and then you have your build localized. And this leads us to this continuous delivery pipeline where you can build nightly builds, just pulling the localized resources from the platform. So the central point of automation and organization of the actual localization process is some localization platform. And also what's important is using some SDK to deliver translations to the app, to your app. So without rebuilding it and without republishing it on the stores, because republishing and waiting for approval from App Store could take some time. And there are SDKs that just get the new versions of the translation just over their internet, and this is also could be a feature of a platform you're using. So using an SDK is a good device so that you can update translators, add new languages, update translations on the fly. So this will help not impact the release times. So this is my advice.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot, because it sounds like all that it really comes down to is, well, one, there's going to be that initial intent. You know, if you plan to localize, okay, great. Well, you're going to need more than just a language, but it really comes down to at least becoming familiar with what that process is, establishing it, and then that creates that streamlined workflow that gives you the ability to, from what it sounds like, expand pretty quickly if, you know, things are going in that direction and it makes sense to.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that, well, when you have a platform and you have internationalized your game and everything is building smoothly, you get your 20 languages, but who is translating actually? Who is doing the translation? So I miss that part very much. So there are several strategies to get the actual translations and QA. And one of the obvious ways is to find some freelance translators, to gather them and just let them go to the platform, and they will do the work. But the quality control, the overall management will be handled by the developer. Sometimes they do this. Sometimes the developers, they have the role of localization manager, who is doing everything regarding the quality, they're hiring translators, paying them, but it's not that efficient. The best way is going to some vendor, like localization services vendor, like Elkinost, which will lend you your localization project manager, who would gather all the translators and organize everything. There are also some strategies for localization if they want to do it budget free, I would say. So,
Okay. because I'm
It's
sure.
gathering
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
gathering community of players to translate their game. So it's a
Ah,
crowdsourced translation. That was the story of Minecraft initial translation. So
okay.
currently they have an open repository, and you can, if you know some language, you can go and translate to some to Icelandic, for example. I know, and given that the community of Minecraft is huge, it works. But if the game is not that that big, the community is less big, then there will be a few fans that would be maintaining the translation of games. There are good examples, there are bad examples, but if you have a good community, mm, it might be good approach to start with community translations. They will translate 80%, and they just will disappear forever.
Yeah.
But at least you get some base to start, and then you go to some maybe vendor who would make it 100%, and also with the quality, the testing. Because it's not in localization, it's not only translation, but there is a quality assurance when the translators and testers, they play the game, they install and play and see how it works, and they report bugs and report linguistic and not only linguistic but also functional issues of the game. So
Mm.
it's a integral part of the localization.
Yeah, because
Um,
there's so
yeah.
many aspects to it too. But I like kind of like that process you laid out. And as we were calling out to the example with crowd localization, I've heard
Mhm.
a lot of situations where students have done that and have that has been very effective for them. But still, like that shouldn't necessarily be. Let's only rely on this. Having that QA is important too, because it's like there's lots of nuances that could happen where certain things could come off as maybe very offensive depending on how it is, or like you said, bugs. There's so many other aspects that can happen, but you know there's solutions, especially if you're on a tight budget. But if that's part of your plan, work it into the plan, find the means to do so. And these are all accessible methods too that you called out to, which is, I think, great. From that too, I called out to like, hey, mistakes could happen, things could come off as offensive or just weird, and people are like, I don't get it, even though it seemed like it would be a clear translation. In light of that, I'm kind of curious, what do you say
Mhm.
separates like a good localization from a poor one? Especially in games where, let's say, culture and story really matter.
Yeah, that's a very simple question, Jimmy. So when you play a game and it feels native,
Mm.
then the localization is good. You just it's like you do not see the localization. It just works. It just works, and you don't see any weird wordings, any accent in voiceovers. You just play, and it just works, and that's a good localization. It just works and feels native. Yeah, and then when you start to think about localization, then localization is not very good.
Right.
Better because you start to think about it
Well,
instead of playing.
right. Well, I think it probably goes back to kind of what you called out before from, like mistake people make if you're trying to make a global presence, not having a local one to start with, essentially, right? And I'm looking at this from that similar lens where if you're thinking too hard about what needs to be done, you're like, oh, I need to translate this specifically, right? We're thinking in a very practical way, we think, where it's like, okay, translation, I could do X, Y, or Z to translate this text. But then because we're thinking so much and about that process and how maybe in a practical way it's really simple, it's not just like that. But instead of thinking a very practical, direct A equals B, we could think of like, we got to think of like, what's native, not what translates. And then I think that gets into the side where that native aspect and using that as a mindset is going to help us do a better job of getting that cultural fit. And that's why I was using kind of like that an analogy of the example you provided earlier of like that local presence versus just thinking of let's get global. It's like, no, let's get local and then make sure we got that fit first.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So really cool stuff. But I love how simple that answer is too, because the difference between good and not good is just making it feel native, and that should really be the focus than anything else, and then just the idea of let's translate it. You know, beyond words, because a lot of what I think I imagine people would expect localization would be is primarily words based. But what role does things like UI, UX, and even like let's say audio or voiceover play into successful localization? Is there anything different, or how do these factor in?
Uh, well, from my experience, there are very few examples where UI or UX were changed uh, for to do in some way to be localized. So if we say about right to left alignment, okay, that's right to left layouts. This changes the UX. You have buttons from right to left, not left to right. This changes the UX sometime. I would say so. Again, if you do not see the localization, then everything is good with the localization. When you don't hear accent in voice dialogues, if you just play and everything feels native, then it's okay. Then it's okay. Everything is okay with localization. I never saw examples of how developers would change UI and UX to some extent. Maybe the sizes of the buttons. Okay, that's okay, but no like drastic changes to UI UX. So when we localize, we don't make much changes. Don't make much changes to the real user experience. The buttons might be smaller or bigger to just so that the text fits. Maybe some pictures are changed, some images are changed, maybe some colors adjusted, but it's not changing overall experience. I would say. So we're translating words, yes, and also audio or voiceovers. But I wouldn't say that we changed the real user experience. It works for everyone.
Okay, and that's great, and it kind of goes back to like when we're making games, we really need to focus on what is that core experience like and everything else, because that's it sounds like and I would say in most cases that's going to be the most universal aspect of any game, right? Is what is that core experience, and ultimately is it fun? And people are it's almost like agnostic in a way. One thing I'm a little bit curious about too is you mentioned about even like art. So even like you're not going to completely change the visual style of your game and stuff, but what about marketing materials such as like banners or capsule art? Do those get factored into sometimes with localization, depending on where you're going? I mean, you called out to like maybe colors, maybe it might be more vibrant colors, for example, or
yeah, I get it. Yes, absolutely. Marketing is a totally different thing. So you localize everything, you change everything. So you cannot change the core UX of a game. If it's Doom, you play Doom in Japanese, in English, in every language, and you just have your control, you have your UX, you do something in the game, and whether it's localized or not doesn't change user experience. But when we talk about marketing, it's a completely different user experience. So marketers change everything from texts, different layouts. If they make landings for Japan and Korea, those are absolutely mind-blowing different landing pages. You cannot simply just translate your landing page for marketing that you've done for German market into Japanese, and that's okay. No, that would absolutely not work. And they have their own rules. So that marketing is pure localized. I've got I recalled one case when localization changing UX. So the case would be word games. So
Okay.
because if we take for example English word games where you just have some rules around it, like around choosing some letters in the words, it might work for English language, for some European languages, but when you do this in Chinese or English or Japanese language, that would be absolutely not working. You cannot localize basically any word game into those languages. Some games are not localizable, and if they want to be localized, they must change the user experience itself. Yeah, that would be example of just word games. And also there are some very culturally specific games that cannot be localized in the way that you will not feel that it's localized. Some Chinese, some Japanese games, even if they are localized, they are so specific that you will be 100% sure you are playing a Japanese game that tried to be understood by you, but it's a Japanese game. It's absolutely, you know that it's localized. It's not localized. It just tries to help you to understand with subtitling, for example. All the dialects, all everything, all the imagery are very Japanese. And when you start playing it, you understand 100% that this is a Japanese game and it cannot be localized. But if you want to play it, they can try so that you will be able to play it. It's not localization, but some like we are watching Netflix with subtitles.
Okay.
It's not localization; it's just subtitles. And for games, there are such games, lots of them that just cannot be localized. If you want to them be localized, then you must just change everything. This is regarding this UX question, which is very complicated for me.
No, I appreciate you digging in. But you know what? You make some good points. And because as you were sharing that, two things that came to mind. One is the subtitle scenario, which is like a lot of us probably can relate to, is sometimes I'll be watching, shows. I know a little bit of Japanese myself or understand a little. So I always watch it with the original language and the subtitles. And I'm like, wait a minute, that context is very different than what the subtitle said. I'm like, so there's like hidden meaning kind of, but it was not intentionally hidden. Right. So there's that. And then even a simpler example is I remember when I was studying Japanese for a bit, or somewhere on that journey, someone was sharing about the term wabi sabi, and there's no real direct translation of that, which is basically something about like nature. It's similar to feng shui, but not really at all. But anyways, just to give you an idea, but there is no direct translation. So it's hard to kind of like conceptualize or explain until you hear it firsthand from someone else who knows exactly what that is. But I think I've even seen this in, let's say, some animes or something I watch where you might be watching something, you're like, okay, this feels very weird right now, and I'm not quite getting with it. And I guess it's a cultural thing, and you're just essentially there for the ride. And that's what it sounds like sometimes in those experiences where the user experience is like, okay, this is different, but I get an idea of what I need to do because, well, I got the subtitles essentially.
Yeah, some games really require some skill so that you have some skill to play. And that might be some cultural skill if it's a very cultural specific game.
But I do appreciate you digging in further to that, because it's like you're right. Like when it comes to UX and stuff and localization, it's not very common. There might be instances because of how a language is read, like format wise, left to right versus right to left. But there are going to be little nuanced situations, which I honestly is quite fascinating. So again, appreciate that.
Yeah, and this
Yeah, keep going.
yeah, and this advice of if you started developing a game and you think of the future that it might be localized, then you never do a word game, for example. You never do
Yeah.
something very culturally specific because you start to understand that how do foreign people would play, and that might have impact on the game development of the game idea from the very beginning. So it changes. Localization changes the product
Mm.
in the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, I am curious if there was just one thing that a studio or developer should prioritize in terms of localization and doing it right, what would you say that would
Mhm.
be out of kind of all the things we talked about?
Well, every product should have a story, especially a game. There are there is a there must be some story behind the game. Some descriptions, there's some description of what is the game about. What are the objects in the game? What are the characters? What it's all about? Some this is like I don't actually remember the name. It's like a design book or design guide or some the game description before it gets produced. A
Yep.
game designer would describe how it all works, the internal world of the game. What is the game? What are the what are the locations? What are the artifacts there? What are the names of heroes? Everything. So every game has this description, and from that description, if you want to localize it in the future, my good advice would be creating a glossary,
Mm.
a glossary of terms, and also the style guide of that would describe every character in the game. What are they, how they speak, what their style. So no, this big description of everything will help in the future to translate it, to translate everything, because if you just have an say for example we have a game where you manage a cafe. You have cafe and you just serve there some drinks, and you have lots of ingredients, and you have lots of characters that would come to your cafe and then chatting there. And if you don't have the descriptions of all those artifacts, all those ingredients, it would become unlocalizable. So whenever you build a game, building a glossary would absolutely help to localize it. So I would not call it just a priority, but it's a must-have. It's a must-have for a game. Having that book that describes everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's missed.
I love that you called out to that, because from a lot of projects I've worked on and stuff, I don't see this too often. But what you're describing, it's not just extremely helpful for localization. It's going to be helpful for the project as a whole, especially as you bring on other people for further story development, for dialogue, for whatever the case may be. Because if you think about it, having those terms in that glossary, or I know I've heard some people refer to it as just like an internal wiki. It could be relative to like a game design document that's a little bit more detailed, but different. Or even like a knowledge base, right, of all your characters, all the environments and things like that. And especially if you have characters that's very narrative driven, like you were saying, like knowing their tone, how are they going to be affected by certain things? If you have that information documented somewhere and then you decide to get it translated, that the person who's working on the project then is going to have a much better idea of like, oh, this is how their tone's going to shift. This is how whatever else is going to happen, making that process so much easier. And then the end result being feeling that much more native.
Yes, and going further, if we talk about also cutting costs of translation and in the AI era, so when you have LLMs that are very capable of translating, they really translate. So if you want to get 75% of quality in translation, you just ask ChatGPT to GPT-5, for example, or Gemini to translate, and you really get a good result. It must be checked by people, of course. It must be quality assured. But anyway, just it just translates. And for an LLM to translate it properly, this knowledge base is must have. It gives the context, so you can just feed your knowledge base to Gemini or ChatGPT. You can see the glossary, and then you will get the translations which are very good. They are in context. So it's this knowledge base and the glossary really impacts the quality of translation. If we talk about automating it in the AI era, so now we are starting to use, and we are having projects when not the people translating it, but LLMs, and people just proofread what the machine translates. So there are lots of projects of this type now. This helps reduce some costs, of course. There are lots of things to consider. It's a tricky way. So not if you take GPT, for example, it doesn't translate well into every language. So some LLMs would translate better just in some language pairs and some content types. So we perform benchmarking over like dozens of available AIs to choose the right one. And this knowledge base and glossary is a must-have when you're going to translate with AI.
Yeah.
So this might be prioritized. And also the process, if you build your localization process around some platform, this will technically solve every aspect, or every technical aspect of localization.
But one way or another, whether you're using a human team or or an AI, the point still comes out like the purpose of that glossary, that knowledge base is really it's almost no different than a form of like you being a director and directing your actors or whatever, right? Because without that direction, without that context, your actors are only going to be able to bring so much or do what they can, right? And the same thing with your team, your localization team, or the same thing with the AI. It needs direction. It needs context in order to make it get as good as it possibly can. So love that you call that, because it doesn't necessarily change anything. Just some things might be a little bit more economical or faster depending on what path you need to go. So I absolutely love that, because again, it's so essential, not just to the project's core, but also to any localization plans you have in the future. You know, Alexander, I can't thank you enough for being here, and we covered a lot. So as we start to close, what are any like tips, suggestions, things that you could share with us based on what we talked about here? And even if it's just, calling out or reiterating some of the important factors, what are those things that our listeners should take away with?
Yeah, to summarize, once again, it's when localizing, start with 2 languages. That will get you 80% of localization in the future. And which I didn't mention, try to make English a master language, because this will help you find the translators. It's hard to translate from Korean to Portuguese. There are no such translators in the world. But if your master language is English, then the world is open. And also try translating with AI. It gives 75% of quality, but make human in the loop and build around some localization platform that you can already use AIs in localization platforms. They are already built in. So if you want to to do it quick and dirty. So localization, you can just use AI. Go to production. If it converts, then you let humans fix the rest of 25%, and you can build the best localization process ever using AI and platforms. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate those tips and reemphasizing some of those points too. And also, I understand that you have some type of like an offer for listeners who I would assume may be interested in localization. What is that you're willing to share with us?
Yeah, we're always open to give free consultation. So whenever you want to build a proper process, especially nowadays, it's with AI to benchmark which model works good. If you want to build a good localization pipeline around some localization platform, you can always come, and this goes free of charge. We're always helping, just giving advice. You can refer anytime to me on my LinkedIn or just going to website. We're very open. Yeah, welcome.
Awesome. So, folks, if you're interested in getting, just a free consultation from, well, it could be Alexander, but from Alkanos, in terms of, process building and such, definitely reach out to them. And as he says, he's on LinkedIn. What are some other links you could drop us, like your website or anything else that people can go to either learn more or even connect with you?
Yeah. Yeah. Always welcome to our website. So it's alkanos.com.
Excellent. And you're on LinkedIn, and let's see. Well, LinkedIn, Alkanos is on there. You're on there. We will definitely put the links in the show notes. So again, if you're considering or just learning to find out more about maybe what we discussed or other specific details or needs to have, feel free to reach out to Alkanos or Alexander. Alexander, I really can't thank you enough for being here today. It has been such a pleasure, and man, long overdue. I think I'm pretty sure this is the only episode with localization. So glad that you were the first and contributing to that conversation. It's just been great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.